Not to sound like a whiner or, a complainer, but one of the downsides of, let's say, a home machinist or, a home hobby shop is the pitfalls that you inevitably run into as far as your equipment and limitations. Now, what I mean, for instance, is like this Logan, for example. Wonderful lathe. I love this thing, and I never give a bad opinion about it. The motor is a 1 horsepower motor. Now, bearing in mind that my cheap Chinese lathe is probably a third of that, and though it seems like it's a little more powerful at times, this motor is extremely old. And doing small stuff on this lathe is fine. It runs great. But as soon as I try to do anything sizable, it just stalls on me. And the motor just bogs down and it drives me absolutely crazy. I tried to thread this 2 1/4 diameter 8 TPI, and it keeps stalling. There's nothing I can do. I tried to run it faster so it would just plow through quickly, and it still stalls. But like I'm trying to say, these are some of the pitfalls of, say, a home machinist, where you're limited to what you can do, and when you're trying to push the limits, I suppose that's when you start getting creative. So I have two options. One, I don't want to do is go back inside that cabinet and replace this 1 horsepower motor. Or two, try to figure out a different way to do this. And, I talked to one of the head engineers at my job, absolutely brilliant guy. I always go to him for all my stupid questions, and he humors me and usually answers them. What he suggested was try to bump up the voltage if I could. It's a 110 motor. Now, I don't care if it destroys the motor, because obviously I'm getting ticked off at this motor, and if I gotta find a 2 horsepower or a 3 horsepower motor, I will. But if I don't, and I bump up the voltage to, say, 130 or 140 volts AC, and it gives me the extra oomph I need to get the job done, then it's a win-win. So, that said, our mission, should we choose to accept it, is going to be digging out one of my transformers and using the Variac, this thing here. So what I'm going to do, this transformer right here is a 2 kVA transformer. If you tie up to this leg, it's 100 volts. If you tie up to this one, it's 200 volts. This is the input. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 200 volts going to my lathe. The input on the transformer, I'm going to put to the Variac, and I'm going to turn the 200 volts down to, the 140 volts. And then from there, we're going to see if, the lathe blows itself up or gives me the extra oomph I need to get this job done. And, in the future, I know if I need the extra oomph, I know what to do. I hope I didn't make that too long-winded. Anyway, stay tuned, and let's see what happens. Oh, to second what I was just talking about the motor, the other reason that I don't want to change that motor if I don't have to is not only because of where it is and how much of a pain in the neck it is to get to it, but it's a reversible AC single phase motor. And I thought that was impossible, to be honest, not that long ago. I thought to reverse an AC motor you had to have three phase, blah, blah, blah. But you don't. Apparently, certain types of AC motors, if you switch a leg on a 110 volt or 220 volt motor, you can reverse the rotation, which is basically how this works. You know, you run the lathe in one direction or the other. Now, finding a reversible AC motor is not easy, especially with a couple of the parameters that I need. It has to be a 1700 RPM motor, for one, not the 3400, continuous duty, you know, etc., etc. It's got to fit inside this cabinet, certain shaft size, hopefully. Again, so it's not as just simple as saying, you know what, heck with it, I want to get a 2 horse or 3 horse or 20 horse motor. It's not that simple. There's other variables that have to be taken into consideration before I do that. And again, I got this lathe for free. I put brand new bearings in the head, which ended up running me about $150. So, you know, I already had most of the tooling and everything else, so I didn't have to really spend any money on this lathe. So if I have to buy a motor for it, by all means, I'm not going to be brokenhearted. But again, you know, as a home hobbyist, and, you know, to beat this thing even further into the ground, I don't want to if I don't have to, if that makes sense. I mean, I still haven't even upgraded the motor on this thing yet. I'm still making do, and it's still working good, you know, using a treadmill motor. And this thing is supposed to be using, you know, a 5 to 10 horsepower motor, and I'm making do with a 3 horsepower treadmill motor with no problems. So I know I can make it work. It's just a matter of how. All right. Now that I beat that to death, let's move on. Okay, let me show you what I got going on here. Like we already talked about, I've got this plugged in now. Input is going to the wall. Output is going to this extension cord, the gray one, which is then plugged into this transformer. And now this is the output that is going to be regulated by the variac. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug this in, the variac, and we're going to adjust this voltage to, let's say, 140 volts. Well, you know what we'll do first? Hang on, let's get a voltage reading off the wall. Okay, so let's get a wall outlet reading first before we go too far with this. Okay, 120 volts. So if we bump this up to, let's say, 140, I think that's a good starting point. Let's go plug this in. Alright, here we go. Power on. Now I'm going to slowly turn this up, and we're going to watch the voltage climb to 140. That's where I'll stop. Okay, I think that's good. So shut this off. Now we're going to plug the lathe in and see what happens. Alright, let's see what happens here. Well, seems okay. Well, let me replace the carbide insert and let's try doing some threading. You guys are gonna have to bear with me here. Things are happening a little quick. My little speed dial is moving kind of fast, and as you can tell, these numbers are pretty worn away. I'm on this black dot, so when that comes around, I've got to engage this. So hang tight. Here we go. And there it is. Son of a gun. I broke another insert. Damn it. Oh well. Well, it was worth a shot, guys. Figured I'd share with you guys the results, and I don't know if any of you ever run into this problem. Something to think about. It's making a humming sound the higher I go, and to be honest, I don't want to burn the motor out right now. Not till I at least have a new motor on hand. So I'm not going to push this thing to the limit. But judging by how easy it stalled, bear in mind, and also it didn't stall. This over here is designed to disengage if this gets stuck, but it's going so slow. This was still spinning, but extremely slow. That was the clicking sound you heard, where it's going click, 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 click. That was the pin trying to re-engage, but it sensed a problem. So I might even have an issue with the clutch as well. I'm not sure. Something else I might have to look at. I know some people weld this together. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to disable my back gear, which is exactly what that would do. But yeah, anyway. Alright guys, that was it. Hopefully you guys got a laugh at my expense. I'll catch you later. So anyway, I just realized I am a freaking idiot. I got everything all set up, ready to go, and I forgot to tighten the damn tool. That might be why it broke or got jammed. Oh my goodness. Oh boy. Okay, take two with the tool tight. Another new insert, so let's see what happens. Now I've got it engaged already. I checked the thread. I made sure that everything was lined up, and now we're on just past the 1. So that's hold on, sorry, I don't mean to throw you around. So that's the mark we're going to use. So what I did was I brought it to the mark. Well, it's just past the mark. Engaged it. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to let it feed, and then I'm going to disengage. I'm taking 2/1000 cut. Let's see what happens. Alright, nothing horrible. We'll bring it back to, let's do 4, not 5. It didn't really touch. Let's try that. Alright, let's see what happens here. Nope. Let's try that again. That's good. That looks promising. Try that. Sorry if you're all over the place. It's hard to hold this camera phone and do everything at the same time. Alright, so far so good. Got that off. We were on 90, so we'll go 3 thousandths. Oh, wait, full revolution. Hold on. I know I'm probably really showing my inexperience right now, but I don't do a lot of thread cutting. In fact, I think this is the 3rd time I've actually cut threads. Alright, here goes nothing. Alright, looks like it's working good. I'll be right back. Well, to make a long story short, it did not work. What ends up happening is the deeper I go on these threads, the more area, you know, obviously the cutter is contacting, and sooner or later it's overwhelming the lathe and stalling the lathe. I was literally just turning the knob 1/1000th at a time, and it was a matter of time before it just bogged down. So I'm gonna have to get another motor for that lathe. I don't have a choice. In the meantime, I'm gonna buy the backplate I need. I was gonna avoid doing that, but the only other option I have is to do it on this CNC lathe, and I don't have the thread cutting ability set up just yet. I have to do the indexing part of this program, and I haven't exactly figured that part out. I've got most everything else all set, but that is the one part I haven't done yet. But it doesn't matter, because I wanted to cut the threads on the lathe that I was going to be using it on. It would have just been better and more precise that way. But it is what it is. There's no failures here. We're not gonna we're gonna lick our wounds, and we're gonna go build it bigger and faster next time. All right, guys. Have yourself a good night, and I will catch you later.